Welcome back, everybody, to another week of Sunday School here at the Lighthouse Church of the Nazarene in Moravia, Iowa, where we are going through the book of Job. This week, we're in Job chapter 6. So, just a quick outline of what's been going on up until now. In chapters 1 and chapter 2, there's what's known as Job's trials. Job, one of the greatest men in the East, a beautiful family, abundance of wealth. It was taken from him in a moment of time. In chapter 2, Job still had his health, but after chapter 2, Job's health was taken away from him. He actually had boils all over his skin. And in Job chapter 2, Job's three friends, Eliphaz, Bilhah, and Zophar show up. And they just sit with him for 7 days straight. Nothing is said. And they just sit with Job and mourn with him. Well, in chapter 3, after sitting for 7 days in silence with his friends, Job speaks. And he says, just why did this happen to me? I don't understand. Why was I even born for all this trouble to come into my life? Then after chapter 3, chapters 4 and 5, Job's friends break their silence. His friend Eliphaz is the first one to speak, and he actually accuses Job of having sin in his life. He goes, for this bad stuff to happen to you, obviously you've done stuff in your life to deserve this. This week in chapter 6, Job is going to answer Eliphaz. So that's where we're at right now. So far, what have we learned from the book of Job? Well, first off, we can learn that the English language is really hard to learn. Could you imagine trying to learn English as your second language and being like, oh, this must be Job? And then like, nope, sorry, that's actually Job. That wouldn't make sense. It'd be like trying to learn the word gnat or knife or lasagna. It'd be really hard. Anyway, I'm just joking. What actually have we learned? We've learned that we can do everything right in this life, and bad things will still happen to us. In fact, it's actually those trials in life that keep us focused on God. We should be most concerned when everything's going right in our life, and we have money, we have our health. When everything's lined out and going great, we need to remember to thank God, because that's the time that we're most susceptible to falling away from God and being like, you know what, I got this life on my own. I can do it. Why would I need God? So we've learned that we can do everything right in this life, and bad things can still happen to us. What else have we learned? We've learned that we shouldn't hold on too tightly to the things of this world, because they can be gone in a moment of time, just like Job's stuff was. And number 3, what have we learned so far? We've learned how to not help mourning people. Job's 3 friends, what should they have done? They were doing great when they just showed up and they didn't say anything. They were just there for Job. It's what's known as the ministry of presence. There's nothing they could have said to make it all make sense and make it better. But just the fact that they were there had to help Job, and Job knew that people cared. It wasn't until they opened their mouth that's where they went wrong. We all know that Mark Twain quote. What is it? It's better to be thought of as a fool and remain silent than to open your mouth and remove all doubt. Now, Mark Twain said that, but where did he get it? It's actually straight out of the Bible. It's Proverbs 17:28, which says, even a fool is considered wise when he keeps silent. So that's what we've learned so far in the book of Job. Last 2 chapters, Eliphaz is accusing Job of having sin. This week in chapter 6, Job answers him. So let's get out our Bibles. Let's follow along. Job chapter 6, verse 1. Then Job answered and said, oh, that my grief were fully weighed, and my calamity laid on it with scales. For then it would be heavier than the sand of the sea. Therefore my words have been rash. The Bible actually uses this illustration of balances all the time. The Bible refers to God having just balances. God's the most fairest judge in the world, and whatever he does, it is right. And I would rather stand in judgment before the all-knowing, all-powerful God than any human judge. One verse I always like, it's Genesis 18:25, which Abraham says, shall not the God of all the earth do what is right? Well, of course he will. The God of the earth will always do what is right. So we see this illustration all throughout the Bible of these scales. And what's Job saying? He's saying if all the sands of the sea were on one side of the balance and my grief on the other side of the balance, my grief would be heavier. He's that bad right now. And then notice what he says. He says, therefore, my words have been rash. Some of the other translations, New Living Translation says spoke impulsively. The NIV says spoke impetuous, which means acting without consideration. Job is so righteous right here. He's sitting in an ash heap, scraping dead skin off with pieces of broken pottery. And what does he say? He actually says, Yeah, my words were kind of rash. I kind of misspoke. I probably shouldn't have done that. Job is such a righteous man. So let's see what he says. Verse 4. For the arrows of the Almighty are within me. My spirit drinks in their poison. The terror of God are arrayed against me. Job actually feels like God is against him right now. He actually feels like God is using him for target practice. And can you blame Job? He's really got it bad right now. Verse 5. Does the wild donkey bray when it has grass, or does the ox low over its fodder? What's Job saying right here? He's saying, I have a reason to complain. My complaints are just. What he's saying here is content animals don't make sounds. What is he? Let's see. Does the wild donkey bray when it has grass? No. When it has grass, when it has food, it's content. It's not braying. Does the ox low over its fodder? No. Content animals don't make sounds. That's what Job is saying here. He's saying, I have a reason to complain. And I agree with him. He does. Verse 6. Can flavorless food be eaten without salt, or is there any taste in the white of an egg? Now, what is Job referring to here? Actually, not everybody agrees right here with what Job is talking about. There's actually probably two possibilities. One, he could be referring to the words of his friend Eliphaz. He could be saying, your words, they were tasteless and they had no substance. They were worthless. That's what he could be referring to right here. Or he could also be referring to the consequences of life that have given him. He's saying the circumstances of my life, they are unpleasant and they're just no good for me. I have no joy in my life anymore. Either one of those would probably work. I don't know exactly what he's referring to here. I probably go with the first one, that he's referring to Eliphaz's words. Verse 7. My soul refuses to touch them. They are as loathsome to me. They are as loathsome food to me. Verse 8. Oh, that I might have my request, that God would grant me the thing that I long for, that it would please God to crush me, that he would loose his hand and cut me off. What is Job saying? He's saying, oh, that I might have my request. What is his request? Job's request is actually that God would take his life from him. He says, I'm done. I have nothing left to live for. Notice that he doesn't ask God, like, God, please restore me back to where I was before. Let me have all my things back. Let me have my family back. That doesn't even cross Job's mind. He's saying, God, just please take my life from me. I'm done. Shouldn't we be glad sometimes when God doesn't answer our prayers? Most of us know how the book of Job ends, and Job actually gets restored double fold and gets another beautiful family. His previous 10 children are in heaven waiting for him. But it does show us that life does sometimes get tough, does it not? And God actually never even condemned Job or found faults with him for his despair here. Let's keep going here. Verse 10. Then I would still have comfort, though in anguish I would exult. He will not spare, for I have not concealed the words of the Holy One. Job says, I have not concealed the words of the Holy One. I think Job is pleading his case right here. He's saying, I've always acknowledged my Maker. I have never been ashamed of putting my trust in him. I've never been ashamed of him. I've always had a constant profession of faith, and I have never once shrank back from being a follower of him. What did Jesus say about this? Jesus said, whoever is ashamed of me and my words, of him the Son of Man will also be ashamed. Jesus said, whoever confesses me before men, him I will confess before my Father in heaven. We always need to be confessing God. We always need to make sure that we're never ashamed of him. Psalm 119:46 says, I will speak of your testimonies before kings, and I will not be ashamed. It's interesting. The prophet Jeremiah had a tough ministry. And if you go to Jeremiah chapter 20, verse 9, Jeremiah says, that's it. I'm done. I'm not going to speak in the name of God anymore. But then Jeremiah says that his words were in me like a burning fire, and I could not contain them. That's the way God should be in our life. Everybody should know that we are a follower of Jesus Christ. Let's keep going here. Verse 11. What strength do I have that I should hope? And what is my end that I should prolong my life? This is Job's problem right now. He has lost all hope. He has nothing left to hope for or live for. It's said that there's 3 necessities in life that the Apostle Paul gives us. Faith, hope, and love. And the greatest of these are love. He says this in 1 Corinthians 13. I've heard it said you can go 40 days without food, 3 days without water, 8 minutes with air, but you can't go 1 second without hope. And Job is saying, I've lost my hope. Now, we as Christians, as followers of Jesus Christ, our hope is different than worldly hope. Worldly hope is wishful thinking, is what is it, like trying to remain optimistic, like I hope tomorrow's better, I hope things get better. Our Christian hope, our hope is certain. Jesus Christ said it, it's done. We don't say, boy, I hope what he said is true, I hope what he said is right. No, if you confess with your mouth the Lord Jesus Christ and believe in your heart that God has raised him from the dead, you will be saved. If you put your trust in him for salvation, what he did on the cross, we know that our names are written in the book of life, that we have an eternal home in the heaven where we will live with him forever. We hope in that, but it's a certain hope, not wishful thinking, not just, boy, I hope that's right. No, Christianity is true. It is certain. But Job, he's lost all hope. And when people lose all hope, when they start feeling useless, that's when the depression sets in. And I'm sure that's happened already with Job. Verse 12. Is my strength the strength of stones, or is my flesh bronze? Job's saying, I'm not just some stoic who doesn't let circumstances get to him. What this tells us, all the heroes of the Bible, they were human beings, just like you and me. And they had feelings, and they didn't just let, like water off a duck's back, never let the problems get to them. No, they had problems, and it got to them. Verse 13, is my help not within me? And is success driven from me? Verse 14, to him who is afflicted, kindness should be shown by his friends. Now, I actually have this verse underlined in my Bible because it's so good. It's the words of Job, but it's true. Suffering people need kindness, not instruction. What does Romans chapter 12 say? Rejoice with those who rejoice and weep with those who weep. We need to show kindness. Kindness is actually one of the fruits of the Spirit that we find in Galatians chapter 5. It says, but the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, long-suffering, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. Against which there is no such law. And those who are Christ have crucified the flesh with its passions and desires. Kindness, it's the fruit of the Spirit that all Christians should have. I've heard it said that kindness is the universal language. Kindness is the language that the dumb can speak and the deaf can still hear. Think about who you really admire. What is it, the people in life that you really admire? What do they have? It's kindness. I know people that have money that I don't admire them. I know people that have status that I really don't admire them. I don't think they have a great life. But people that are kind, people that put others ahead of themselves, those are always the people you admire. And Job is saying here, to him who is afflicted, kindness should be shown by his friends. I think he's pointing his fingers at his friends and saying, like, you guys aren't doing this right. Verse 15, my brothers have dealt deceitfully like a brook, like the streams of the brook that pass away. I just wanted you to notice something right here. Job always refers to his friends in the plural. It's like you three, even though only one of them has spoke right now. Eliphaz is the only one that's spoken, but Job is referring to all three of his friends and saying, you guys, my brothers, have dealt deceitfully like a brook. What can we take away from this? You will be known by who you associate with. Perhaps the other two friends, just their silence has spoken and saying like, yeah, I'm agreeing. Or maybe they sit there and nod their head and be like, yep, Job, they're right. Anyway, only one of them spoke, but Job is speaking to all three of them right there. Verse 16, which are my brothers have dealt deceitfully with me, like a brook, like the streams of the brook that pass away. Verse 16, which are dark because of the ice, and into which the snow vanishes. When it is warm, they cease to flow. When it is hot, they vanish from their place. The paths of their way turn aside. They go nowhere and perish. The caravans of Tema look, the travelers of Sheba hope for them. They are disappointed because they were confident. What is Job telling his friends here? He's saying, you guys are useless. You're like brooks in the desert, which the travelers come to and they find that there's nothing there. We've all heard sayings before. You're as useless as a carpet layer's ladder, right? Job is telling his friends you're useless. He's saying, instead of making me feel better, you're adding to my grief. Job's friends are like, say Job's drowning in the middle of the lake, and Job's friends row up to him in a boat and are like, hey, can you hold this rock for us, please? That's what Job's friends have done to him. But there's actually a lesson there for us. We should never add to people's burdens. It's like kicking a man when he's already down, or what's the saying? Adding insult to injury. We should never add to other people's burdens. We as spouses should never make our spouse's life miserable. We as children should never make our parents' life harder. We should never add burdens to our children, us as friends. Pastors, especially. Pastors carry a ton of burdens in them. You think they know everybody's problem in the church, and do they want more complaining people pointing out what they need to do different? Absolutely not. I read a story actually about a pastor who he finally quit and said, I wanted to just teach people God's word, but all I did was referee about who got to have keys to the church and to the kitchen. We should never add to other people's burdens as much as possible. Where are we at here? Verse 21. For now you are nothing. You see terror and are afraid. Did I ever say, bring something to me, or offer a bribe for me from your wealth, or deliver me from the enemy's hands, or redeem me from the hand of the oppressor? Job's saying, did I even ask your guys' opinion? Did I want anything from you? Did I even ask you to be here? No. Verse 24. Teach me, and I will hold my tongue. Cause me to understand where I have erred. How forceful are right words, but what does your arguing prove? Do you intend to rebuke my words and the speeches of a desperate one, which are as wind? He's saying your words are just bags of wind, worthless. Yes, you overwhelm the fatherless and you undermine your friend. Now, therefore, be pleased to look at me, for I would never lie to your face. Job might have looked so horrific that his friends couldn't even look at him. And maybe that's what he's saying here. Like, guys, just look at me. Whatever picture you have of Job, it's probably a lot worse. In the next chapter here, we're actually going to find out that Job was covered with worms and dirt and dead skin all over him. Job could have looked really horrific here. Maybe his friends couldn't even look at him. Verse 29, yield now, let there be no injustice. Yes, concede my righteousness still stands. Is there any injustice on my tongue? Cannot my taste discern the unsavory? And that's the end of chapter 6 right here. Chapter 7 just going to pick it right back up again. We're in the middle of Job's speech. Next week is just going to be Job talking to his friends, and then he's going to be talking to God. And then in chapter 8, another friend starts answering him. So we're done for this week. We made it through chapter 6. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something, and I'll see you the same time, same place next week. Bye.